ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today. Subscribe at ILTV.tv and watch from any device. Now, speaking of Iran, negotiators in Vienna reporting zero progress in renewing nuclear agreements. And this fact giving further credence to Israel's call for alternate action. But what kind of alternative, do you ask? Well, a number of new reports now shedding light on alleged secret operations to stunt the Ayatollah regime's nuclear program. Specifically, Israeli Mossad agents apparently posing as political dissidents to recruit employees at the Natanz nuclear plant in Iran and to convince them to smuggle in explosives disguised as food boxes. And then the explosion, going off last April, completely destroying the plant's internal power systems. Here to discuss this further, though, is author of Drone Wars, Seth Frantzman. Seth, thank you so much for joining us. Now, what does it take, first of all, to pull off an operation like this?
Well, I would assume, the original report there is from the Jewish Chronicles. And they've had some other interesting reports on this type of activity in the past. I think in general, the sense is that, the Iranian regime appears to be penetrated by foreign intelligence and that the regime is having trouble securing very sensitive facilities, whether that's Natanz or whether it's protecting some of the key figures involved in its nuclear program. And obviously that goes back, many, many years to Iran also having trouble with cyber attacks and being unable to protect some of its centrifuges from that issue as well.
All right, well, according to reports, up to 10 scientists agreed to sabotage the Natanz plant, but they thought that they were working for international dissident groups. What does this say about Iran's internal control, especially as anti-government protests in Iran are picking up speed?
Well, it would seem to say that, the Iranians can be recruited somehow and convinced to do, let's say, malfeasance and bad things to their own program. Although I think whenever we deal with reading about intelligence reports or leaks of this nature, you have to question whether that actually happened or whether that's messaging designed to undermine the regime or cause the regime to run in circles looking for its own, moles or double agents or whatever. So I think you always have to wonder whether, well, did this happen, or is this something that's trying to make the regime unstable and confused?
Okay, so what do you think? Into what category do you think that this falls?
Well, I just think we just don't know. We know that it appeared usually in foreign reports. Obviously Israel, only hints at, but it never really takes any credit for these types of things. So we've seen lots of foreign reports over the years, whether it's New York Times or Jewish Chronicle, alleging, that Israel killed this Iranian, scientist, and that obviously there's been other types of incidences at Natanz and other types of sabotage. And I think Israel's obviously on record as saying it does not want Iran to reach a certain red line threshold in terms of enrichment of uranium that would allow Iran to be quite close to developing and testing a nuclear device.
Now, assuming that this was a successful Israeli operation, and also taking into account that Vienna discussions are seemingly going nowhere, do you see other Western powers joining Israel in these types of attacks, or maybe just silently supporting?
Well, we know that Israel and the United States have certainly cooperated in the past. We also know that there's recent discussions with Israel and the UK, with the UK being very strong on saying that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. I think that would probably be Israel's closest friends in this case. Obviously, other European countries have said that they prefer Iran not develop a nuclear weapon, whether that's Germany or France or whoever. And obviously, even Russia and China, which are kind of more friendly to Iran, probably don't want Iran actually to be an actual nuclear power because that could destabilize the region. They just don't mind using Iran as a kind of, blackmailing the West and claiming it's gonna build a nuclear weapon, but always holding it back a bit. So I think Israel has very close friends, especially in Washington, and no one wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
All right, well, how would you describe or predict Iran's response to all of this, as Iran gets seemingly cornered? Is Iran going to lash out more than what we've seen in the past in terms of its spread of malfeasance across the region? For example, we just saw ballistic missiles fired at Riyadh.
Well, yeah, Iran has in the last 5 years or so really gone to town in terms of expanding its role across the region. That includes militias in Iraq. That includes, sending precision guided or attempting to send precision guided munitions to Hezbollah. It means sending drones to Syria that threaten Israel and threaten the United States. It's also trafficking ballistic missiles and drones to Yemen, also sending drones and missiles, or at least blueprints for them, to Hamas in Gaza. So what Iran is trying to do openly is surround Israel with a kind of, 4, 5, or 6 front war and provide lots of little threats against Israel and also against Israel's friends in the region, whether that means destabilizing the Gulf or attacking commercial tankers or threatening the United States and Iraq, all those different parts of the chessboard. And that's what Iran has been up to. And we saw the recent attacks by the Houthis in Yemen, who are backed by Iran, trying to target Riyadh. And each of these wars have their own little proxy groups. And Iran likes to use proxy groups because then it can get other people to fight and die and not have to have the Iranian regime actually pay any price.
All right, well, of course, we're hoping for less violence and more stability in the region. But in the meantime, Seth Frantzman, thank you so much.
Thank you.